military off guard, the speed with which they've been able to do it?
We have been watching this from a very early period, right after the president gave us the order to draw down. We certainly have been watching what the Taliban is doing. We have noted, and we have noted with great concern, the speed with which they have been moving and the lack of resistance that they have faced. And we have been nothing but honest about that. And I think I'll leave it there.
What about the lack of resistance that they may face in Kabul? Is there a concern that the Afghan military will not fight for Kabul?
That's a question for Afghan leadership to determine for themselves. Obviously, as I've said from the beginning, we want to see the will and the political leadership, the military leadership that's required in the field. We still want to see that, and we hope to see that. But whether it happens or not, whether it pans out or not, that's really for the Afghans to decide. Oren.
You've said here many times that Afghanistan cannot and will not become a base from which to launch attacks against the U.S. homeland or its allies. Does the speed of the Taliban advance shake your confidence in that statement?
No. Steve from military.com.
Hi, thanks for doing this. Are any additional Air Force squadrons or aircraft heading to the Middle East for this? And then could you also speak to any of the rules of engagement troops on the ground will have?
I have nothing to announce or speak to with respect to additional Air Force assets. I've told you, I've given you pretty much the laydown of exactly what we're sending to support this movement. That said, I also said, in fact, I meant it in my opening statement, that there will be airlift provided. Clearly, there's going to be an Air Force role here with respect to airlift. But in terms of combat aircraft, I know of no such moves to do that. And as I said, I've laid out for you now twice what the movements would be, and I'm not going to speak about rules of engagement. We never do that from the podium. David.
Now, you said you won't speculate about movements on Kabul, but how would you describe the situation now? Is Kabul under threat? Is Kabul isolated? What is it?
Right now, without getting into a battlefield assessment every day, I don't want to do that. But Kabul is not right now in an imminent threat environment. But clearly, David, if you just look at what the Taliban's been doing, you can see that they are trying to isolate Kabul. Now, what they want to do if they achieve that isolation, I think only they can speak to. But you can see a certain effort to isolate Kabul. It is not unlike the way they've operated in other places of the country, isolating provincial capitals and sometimes being able to force a surrender without necessarily much bloodshed. Again, I can't speak for what their intentions are. What I can tell you is that we're taking the situation seriously, and that's one of the reasons why we move these forces, or we're moving these forces into Kabul to assist with this particular mission, because we know that time is a precious commodity here.
Is it isolated now?
I don't want to get into a specific intelligence assessment on the battlefield. I just don't want to do that. But clearly, from their actions, it appears as if they are trying to get Kabul isolated. Lucas.
Let me try it this way. The main arteries going into Kabul.
Again, I'm not going to get into a conditions on the ground assessment every day about avenues and lines of communication, except to say it certainly appears that the Taliban is trying to isolate the city, and they have, throughout this last few weeks, you've seen it for yourself, taken over border crossings, taken over highways and major intersections to control lines of what we call communication, and lines of revenue, and those kinds of things. I mean, but I can't speak, and I won't speak specifically to what the situation is in Kabul right now.
John, many times this week you've said the Afghan forces had the advantage. What proof can you offer as the Taliban have taken over now vast majorities of the country and they've now surrounded Kabul?
That the Taliban have moved with the speed with which they have, and that the resistance that they have faced has been insufficient to stop those, to check those advances, does not mean, Lucas, that the advantages aren't still there. You have to use it. You have to be willing to apply
Any
it.
sense, John?
Yes,
If you're
it
saying
does.
that they have all the advantages as they're getting crushed on the battlefield, it makes no sense to say they have the advantage. The Taliban appear to have all the advantages right now.
Lucas, I appreciate the effort again. They have greater numbers. They have an Air Force, a capable Air Force, which, oh, by the way, is flying more airstrikes than we are every day. They have modern equipment. They have organizational structure. They have the benefit of the training that we have provided them over 20 years. They have the material, the physical, the tangible advantages. It's time now to use those advantages.
Is the U.S. military prepared to evacuate all Americans from Kabul and help close the U.S. Embassy in Kabul if the State Department requests it?
Our mission right now is to help the State Department reduce their personnel, their civilian personnel in Kabul, and to assist with their acceleration of the SIV immigrant visa process, the special immigrant visa process. That is what our focus is on right now.
How close is the U.S. government to closing its embassy in Kabul?
You'd have to talk to my colleagues at the State Department. They get to decide that. They have made it clear, though, that as of today, they are reducing, not eliminating, their diplomatic presence in Kabul. We are simply helping them support that reduction.
And after a night of sleeping on it, are these 3,000 U.S. troops going to Kabul? Is this a combat deployment?
I didn't sleep on that question, Lucas. I thought I answered it pretty well yesterday.
You did, hold on, you did answer it, John. John, these soldiers and Marines that are fully kitted out, putting on night vision goggles, landing in Kabul, taking positions at the airport, they're going to a combat zone, are they not?
They're certainly going into harm's way, Lucas, and they will
combat
have
zone?
Lucas. They will have the right of self-defense. They will be armed, and as I said yesterday, and I don't think I could have made it any more clear, that if there is an attack upon our forces, our commanders have now and always have had the right and responsibility to defend themselves. And any attack on our forces in Afghanistan will be met swiftly with a forceful and an appropriate response. And I know, listen, I know you want to get into the nomenclature here. Nobody's walking away from the fact that this is potentially dangerous. In fact, I think one of the things I said at the opening of the press conference was I'm not going to provide a lot of operational detail because we know it's dangerous. We're all mindful of the perilous situation in Afghanistan and the deteriorating security situation, Lucas, and I find it a little I find it frustrating that you're trying to pin me down on a nomenclature here, like we're afraid to say the word combat. After 20 years of being in Afghanistan, we understand what we're facing right now. We're taking the risks very, very seriously, and our troops and their leaders will have all the rights and responsibilities that they need to protect themselves and their comrades.
Did the Defense Secretary recommend this withdrawal of American troops from Kabul?
I'm sorry?
Did the Defense Secretary recommend the full withdrawal of U.S. troops from Kabul? This is before this week, of course.
I'm not going to talk about the Secretary's recommendations to the Commander-in-Chief.
Do you think it's important for history, for the transcript, for the people watching this briefing right now? Did the Defense Secretary support the full U.S. military withdrawal from Kabul?
Lucas, Lucas, I'm not now, and I haven't, never will, talk about the Secretary's advice and counsel to the Commander-in-Chief. That's totally inappropriate. The President has made his decision, and we are executing that decision. He has also made additional decisions, such as helping the State Department reduce their personnel, and we're going to support that too.
Now, some veterans think that the Americans should just pull everybody out of Kabul. The U.S. government should pull all Americans out of Kabul and then just level the embassy. What do you think about that?
I think that one of the great things about this country is that people are free to express their opinions about anything that they want. What I'm here to do, Lucas, my job, is to articulate the policies that we're executing and the way in which we're executing them. And that's what my focus is today, to tell you what we've been ordered to do and how we're going to execute those orders.
Is it time just to pull all Americans out right now and destroy the
Lucas, we are focused on helping the State Department reduce their footprint in Kabul. That's what we're focused on, and that's what we're going to be doing. Louis.
I'd like to follow up on Lucas's fourth question, if I could.
As opposed to the 14th?
Yeah. You talked about how the troops there have the inherent right of self-defense. That was actually going to be my question. There's a tactical purpose for sending these troops there, which you've described in very general terms. I know you don't want to get into specifics. But is there a secondary effect that you're having by sending these troops there into Kabul, which is sending a message to the Taliban these troops are here, don't attack us, we're here to carry out our mission, and at the same time saying, we are here to support the government of Kabul, don't attack Kabul.
Are you suggesting that there's a contradiction there?
No, I'm trying to ask, is there a messaging intention as well by sending these troops there as well? I understand the primary mission there is to do this, protect the forces, protect the Americans and the Afghan interpreters and their families as they leave. But at the same time, is there a secondary effect that you're gaining by sending these troops there, which is to message the Taliban, don't attack us while we're doing this?
The main purpose for these troops is to conduct this particular mission. And as I said yesterday, the Secretary made his decisions based on based on prudence to make sure that you have what you need and that you have reserve if you need reserves, because we don't know exactly how the situation's going to unfold. It's not, he didn't choose these units or this approach to send a message. He chose these units and this approach to accomplish a mission and to make sure that he had enough capability and capacity to do it safely and in an orderly fashion. That said, and I've said this now three or four times, if these forces are attacked and threatened, we have the ability, the right of self-defense, and we will respond in a forceful and appropriate way.
And just one quick follow-up. We've talked about the troops from the 82nd Airborne going into Kuwait that could be on standby if needed. Is their mission going to be, if they are needed, exactly like the ones from the 3,000 that will be arriving by the end of this weekend? Or would it be something different?
I'm sorry, say it again?
Sure, no problem. The brigade, the BCT, headed to Kuwait.
Yeah.
Is their mission, should they be called upon, are they going to be doing exactly what the 3,000, the 3 battalions arriving in Kabul by the end of the weekend? Or is there some thinking that maybe they might do something else?
They're a ready reserve force that we would have available to us should they be needed for any number of security missions. And again, I couldn't begin to speculate right now what those missions would look like. But they will have capabilities that are commensurate with the infantry battalions that are going to Hamid Karzai International Airport over the course of the next few days.
Thank you.
Thank you. Question is that Pakistan is blaming now again U.S. for the crisis in Afghanistan, and also Prime Minister of Pakistan, he said he already endorsed the Taliban government in Kabul. And finally, if any country in the region, including India, asks U.S. help in this mission of evacuation?
I don't know of any other nations involved in this. I mean, these are sovereign decisions that nation states have to make. As I said yesterday, should we be asked to support any movement by our allies and partners, we can do that, and we will do that. I don't know of any, but I don't know of any such requests or such requirements. And look, just broadly speaking, what we said before is any of Afghanistan's neighboring nations, and any nations in the international community that believe they have or want to have a stake in the future of Afghanistan, we simply would urge them to act in ways that helps lead to those kinds of better outcomes for the Afghan people, and to help us continue to pursue a negotiated political settlement. Dan Lamoth.
Thank you, John. You said yesterday that you thought this was the right time for this mission. Lawmakers from both parties, lots of nonprofits, lots of Afghans would say that the right time for this mission with SIVs was actually back in May or June. Can you square those two things? Why did it take so long? Thank you.
We've said for quite some time, Dan, that we know we have a moral obligation to help those who helped us, and that we were ready, willing, and able to support efforts to move special immigrants people applying for a special immigrant visa out of the country and to locations, and we have met that obligation. It is a process that, as you know, it does not reside here at the Defense Department, and a process that has requirements. So what I can tell you is, from a DoD perspective, it's not something we ever lost sight of. It wasn't an obligation we just all of a sudden forgot and then came around to. As I said at the outset, we've planned for a lot of contingencies, and this was certainly one of them. Tony Capaccio.
Hi, John. I had a couple questions. You said DoD is a planning organization. Has CENTCOM presented to the Secretary or the Joint Staff a contingency plan to reintroduce U.S. combat troops, a la what we did in 2014 in Iraq, if the White House requests it? Has such a plan been crafted?
Yeah, that we are a planning organization is true, Tony. What's also true is we don't talk about every single plan on the books. Our focus right now, Tony, and the plans that we are executing are to meet the President's drawdown requirement by the end of this month, and to assist in the drawdown of State Department personnel also by the end of the month. And I'm not going to speculate about what things look like going forward. And I would remind Tony that this mission is a narrowly focused, very specific, tailored mission to support the State Department at this particular time.
I have a second question.
Go ahead.
Okay, second question. You've heard the narrative and the questions from reporters and everybody else about, is this a repeat of the fall of Saigon? You're not a historian, but I know that the Secretary, a number of you guys are thinking, how do you answer that question? Can you give a sense of where the analogy is apt and where it's a very bogus, fallacious analogy to equate what's going on now with the potential fall of Saigon?
Yeah, Tony, what I can tell you is we're not focused on the history of the Vietnam War. We're just not. We're focused on meeting the requirements that we have today. That's where our headspace is. Certainly, we've seen the punditry and the commentary. I think it's best to leave that to historians